right, More Love Nation. Welcome back to the More Love Connection podcast. As we stated in the intro, we have an amazing guest on the show today, someone that we know you all are going to just get a lot of gems for. So make sure you got your journals out, your iPads, your iPhone, your Androids, whatever it is you need to take notes. Please make sure you have your notepad ready. Our next guest is a world-renowned Enneagram author, speaker, and coach. She is also the founder and lead content creator of Your Enneagram Coach, a community designed to be a safe place for individuals to explore the Enneagram. She has been married to her husband, Jeff McCord, for 24 years, and they recently just launched a podcast entitled Your Enneagram Coach. They also have two children. More Love Nation, please welcome Beth McCord to the More Love Connection podcast. How are you, Beth?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me here. This is so fun.
Yes, we are extremely excited to have you on the show. But before we go any further, More Love Nation, one more thing we need you to do. Go and follow Beth. Check out her website at www.yourenneagramcoach.com. On her website, they offer free Enneagram assessment tests, Enneagram coaching, and much more. Check out her Enneagram Instagram and Facebook, as well as the podcast, all entitled the same thing, Your Enneagram Coach. And lastly, Beth and her husband, Jeff, recently just released two books, Becoming Us and the Enneagram Journal Collection. So without further ado, again, we'll welcome you to the show and let's just jump on into the questions.
Great.
All right. So Beth, thank you for joining us today and being on our podcast. So Jay and I were talking and I had already discovered the Enneagram and been learning about it for over a year. And I tried to get Jay into it. He didn't want to hear it. He didn't know what it was. He wasn't into it. So can you explain to our listeners what is the Enneagram and why the Enneagram would be beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. So the word Enneagram is a Greek word. Ennea means 9 and gram means diagram. So really it is referencing the symbol, and the symbol is a 9-pointed star with a circle around it. And so the 9 points represent 9 basic personality types, or another way you could say it is 9 valid perspectives of the world. So each personality sees, interprets, and reacts to their circumstances differently. And so like you guys being a 5 and a 7 are going to see the world completely different. And that's really cool, but can also get really frustrating, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, what? How could you see it that way? Or how could you think of it that way? Or why would you even say it that way? Because we see it so differently. And the Enneagram really helps to understand that. So at the core, you can just to kind of simplify the Enneagram for people, because it's different than Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders or love languages. The Enneagram tells you why you think and feel and behave in particular ways. So it's about the motivations behind what you do. And because a lot of us know what we do, or we see other people's reactions to life, but why did they do it? That's the big key. And so the Enneagram, think of it as your internal GPS. You have a current location, just like if you're driving in the car right now and you're using your GPS, you have a current location. That's your main Enneagram type. And the reason we say main is because you use all 9 types to varying degrees, but one reigns supreme. And that's your current location. And each main type has a healthiest destination, kind of like if you're trying to get, like I'm in Nashville, trying to get from Nashville to the Opryland, up in downtown Nashville.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I need to kind of know how to get there, right? That's like the destination I'm heading for. But like we all do in our car, hopefully not often, we veer off course. We get distracted, we fall asleep at the wheel, you name it. And we fall into these same common pitfalls in our life, right? And we get upset or frustrated with ourselves or others, and we don't understand why it's happening. Well, the Enneagram is going to be very clear as to why it's happening. But what's even more important is if we use the Enneagram like a rumble strip on the highway, the things that wake you up and alert you before you fall off.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Enneagram is like that. It is going to say, hey, if you keep thinking, feeling, and behaving in this particular way, even though it feels right to your personality style, you're going to land in that same common pitfall. So why not take this opportunity to be awake and alert and to get back on your healthiest trajectory for your personality type? Now, what's healthiest for one type isn't necessarily always the best for another type. And so what you might think your spouse needs may actually not be what they really need. It's what you might need. And so this helps us to have empathy and grace, compassion and understanding, mercy, forgiveness, and deeper love for one another. Because simply, if you think about the 9 perspectives as being 9 different colored glasses we're wearing, then we can take off our own glasses for a second and say, hey, can I wear yours? Can you tell me what it's like from
Mhm.
your vantage point and see it through their lens? That can change the trajectory of any relationship,
Mhm.
especially one of our most dear ones, which is marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talked about like the 9 points. And as Destiny said, I had no clue what the Enneagram was. She started showing me this stuff, and I'm like, what is this star? What are these numbers?
Mhm.
And she started talking to me about, like, hey, I'm a type 5. I really want you to take this test. I took the test, and it was like type 7. And I'm like, okay, what, you know, so can you kind of briefly just explain the numbers and
Yeah.
what goes, the personalities with each number?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the symbol, because I know a lot of people right now aren't able to see it wherever they're at,
Mm-hmm.
it's a 9-pointed star, and at the top of the star is the number 9. And when you go around clockwise, it's just like a clock, 1 through 9. Instead of there being 12 numbers, the 9 sits at the top versus 12, but 1 sits right next to it. So the
Mm-hmm.
type 1 are the moral perfectionist. They're fearing, and that's the biggest thing when you're trying to find your main type, you're wanting to find the core motivations, what your core fear is, so you don't want this to happen ever. You have a core desire, and that's what, oh man, if I just have this, life will be perfect and grand. Then you have a core weakness. Other teachers call it the passion or the deadly sin. But this core weakness is your Achilles heel. It's what trips you up time and time again and really shows you your need for growth, your need for God to help you. And then the core longing. This is the message your heart longs to hear. And we won't go through all of those, but they can find it at my website, yourenneagramcoach.com/core motivations. And there's a free PDF for them to download. And they can look at all of them and really think through which one of these is reigns supreme, why you think, feel, and behave. But the type 1, the moral perfectionist, they're fearing being bad, evil, and corrupt and wrong. They desire to be right, to have integrity, and to be balanced. The type 2 is a supportive advisor, and they fear being rejected, dispensable, unwanted, unloved. What they're really wanting is to be loved, valued, appreciated, and needed. And then the type 3 is a successful achiever. They fear being a failure, exposed, worthless, inefficient. And so what they desire is to have high status and high regard, to be accomplished, for others to admire what they've done. The type 4 is the romantic individualist. They fear being mundane, just like everybody else, being emotionally cut off, so not being able to have their emotions. What they desire is to be different, special, and their most authentic self. The type 5 is the investigative thinker, and they fear being having obligations placed on them, being invaded, intruded on, annihilated, and to not have enough knowledge to move forward. What they desire is to be capable, competent, knowledgeable, and insightful. The type 6 is type
Yeah.
6 is the loyal guardian. They fear being without support, guidance, and security. They also fear being abandoned, abandoned, targeted, and blamed. But they desire to have that guidance, security, and support to move forward with confidence. Now, the type 7s are the entertaining optimist, and they fear being emotionally trapped in pain. They fear being bored, limited, deprived, and definitely missing out on something fun, the true FOMOs of the world.
Yeah.
And they desire to be happy, satisfied, and fully content. Our type 8s are the protective challengers, and they fear being harmed, betrayed, and left at the mercy of injustice. they desire to protect themselves and those closest to them. And last but not least is my type, the peaceful mediator. They fear conflict of any kind, tension, discord with others, and they desire to have inner stability and peace of mind. And that's the 9 types. And there's a lot, obviously, more to it, but that just gives you a real quick overview of the 9 types and parts of their motivations.
Yeah. And one of the things that, because once I actually got into the Enneagram, and Destiny can kind of attest, like, I was sending the link to all of my friends, like, take this test, like, take this test, have your girlfriend or your spouse take this test. And one of the things that I really liked was how you have gone through for each personality type and matched it with a different number. And it was so intriguing to see the 7 and 5s. And it was like, wow, how does she know us? It's like,
exactly. It's almost like there's a camera in your room.
Yeah,
right?
it's like, how does she know us? Like, it was spot on. So
I think I was just really, really almost relieved and astounded to understand and realize that people don't see the world the way that I do. That to me is just so fascinating. That's something that I think about. It's like, wow, this person actually has a totally different viewpoint about everything and the way that they, think things should happen. Oh, that's amazing to me. We also wanted you to tell us what made you get into the Enneagram. Like, how did you find it?
Well, it's probably very similar to a lot of the people that are listening right now. I know that you had said a lot of your listeners are kind of in the millennial generation.
Correct.
And so, though I'm not there, I was there at one time. Well, not the millennial generation, but that age group. And so when I was about 20, so my husband and I got married when we were 20, and we had both our kids by the age of 25. Well, when you get married at 20, you don't even know yourself very well, let alone this other person. And we had our dating relationship was like, it was almost as if, like, let's say you're professional ballroom dancers. Like, you were just getting along great. This is amazing. We're going to be the greatest couple ever. So of course we get married at 20 thinking this is going to be the best thing. And then all of a sudden it becomes a game twister where we're stumbling over each other. We can't figure each other out. Like, we love each other dearly, but man, this is getting hard. And I just couldn't understand why it went in that direction. And so then we added the 2 kids, which definitely makes it more confusing, right?
Yeah.
And so about that time when we were struggling and seeing a counselor, we had some friends seeing a counselor. He introduced them to the Enneagram. And just like you said, like, I had to tell everyone.
Yeah.
They introduced it to us. And Jeff at the time was in seminary. So he was already inundated with a lot of studying and reading. So he kind of skimmed it and he thought it was pretty intriguing. But I devoured it. And as a type 9, type 9s know themselves the least because we basically have looked at everyone else's desires and needs and wants and flooded ourselves out. So we accommodate, we people please, we go along to get along. And so we don't really know ourselves. And that can frustrate other people. Like, well, what do you want? I don't know. What do you want? Type of thing. But it's because we really don't know because we haven't taken the time or the skill set to figure that out. So when I read this Enneagram book, it was so clear. It was like wiping some of the fog away, and I could see more clearly my internal world and to take better steps personally, but also in our relationship. I could describe myself to Jeff more, which helped him immensely. And we just saw our relationship start to thrive a little bit more. Now, just because you know the Enneagram doesn't mean you're not going to have these same common pitfalls. What it's going to do is be that rumble strip to wake you up so you don't fall into them, hopefully. But even if you do, you now know how to own it and to ask for forgiveness and get back on your right path. And hopefully your spouse or your friend or coworker will help you along the way with that compassion and empathy. So that's really kind of where it started. So I was 26 years old, 25, 26 years old when I learned about it. And then we used it in the churches Jeff served at with individuals, couples, and marriages. And then until finally in 2015, 16, we really felt called to start your Enneagram coach. And here we are today.
That is amazing. And, I've even said it to Destiny, like, marriage is hard work. And this is,
Mhm.
it's like being able to understand, okay, this is her perspective. And now we
Yeah.
can put, the Enneagram behind it and say, okay, well, this makes sense. This is why you think the way you think. And we're completely opposites when it comes to this particular situation.
Yes.
Um, and so
Mhm.
for us, it's been very helpful, especially when we get through those, we call them long days, extremely long days that we have. It's just like,
Yes.
all right, this day isn't going on too long. Let's get it over with. But
Yes.
just being able to help us see each other's perspectives, and we're still learning, like you
Yes.
said, it's just the rumble strips. But can you kind of go a little bit deeper, like with the intersectionality of people and just having different types and how we, because I didn't know you can have a wing,
Mhm.
and you rely
Mhm.
on, oh, I'm a type 7, but in this situation, I revert to a type 4 or 5, or,
Yeah.
so in marriages, how does that work?
Yeah. So there's several layers to the Enneagram. So it can be a very complex system. I think what I offered to the Enneagram world through my books and online courses and teaching is I simplify it while keeping it still profound, kind of like Cliff Notes or Spark Notes. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're reading
Mhm.
Shakespeare and it's like, what? You want
Right.
someone to just give you really what it's trying to say. And
Right.
that's really what I do. So the Enneagram has lots of layers, and one of the layers is wings. These are the two numbers on either side of your main type. And just like I said, if you looked at the symbol, it's kind of like a clock in the sense that it goes 1 through 9, except for, it's not 12. But the two numbers on either side of your main type is your wings. So as a 9 that sits at the top, type 1 and type 8 are sitting next to me. For you as a 7, it's 6 and 8. And then as you as a 5, it's 6 and 4. And think of the wings as salt and pepper, and
Mm-hmm.
you're this perfectly, cooked filet mignon. When you use salt and pepper in the right way, it enhances, it flavors the steak, it draws out the best qualities. You don't become the salt and pepper, you don't become your wings. Your core motivations are still your main types, but you bring in elements of these other types. Now, that's when you're healthy. Now, you can use your wings in kind of average or autopilot ways or unhealthy ways as well. And that's why it's good to study up on your wings as well to recognize the rumble strips there, but also to get excited and celebrate when there's some really good wins and healthy moments. So for me as a 9, the 9s, like I said, just want to go along to get along. Everything's going to be great and fine. And but we can overlook ourselves and allow others to overlook us. But if I bring in my 8 wing, the protective challenger who has a lot of confidence and is very assertive, if I bring some of that in a healthy way, it means I can be the kind of coach, the author, the speaker that has confidence and drive and gets things done. But I'm still a 9. I'm still going to do it in this kind of peaceful, tender, soft way, but you're going to feel more power behind it. But I can also use my 1 wing, which is more precise, wants details, wants to make sure everything is right. Now, when I use the 1 wing in a right way, that means that I can make my slideshows or my materials look great and make sure it's done well. It's precise. But I can also use my wings in an unhealthy way. I can use my 8 like a snowplow, and I can kind of, it usually only happens around my family, but I can get more irritated and
Mm-hmm.
visibly show my irritation and frustration
Mm-hmm.
um, around the family. And that's not
Mhm.
helpful. But I need to recognize that and I need to own up on that. But I can also use my 1 in an unhealthy way where I can become nitpicky and critical and judgmental. And I need to know that so I can own it. And now my 9, I can still use those in healthy all the way to unhealthy ways. And I need to understand that too. Um, I can be a mediator and peaceful and be the cheerleader for all viewpoints, but I can also hide. And I need to recognize all of those things. And so again, it's not it's easy for people to start to read or study Enneagram and put themselves down. That is not what the Enneagram is for, nor should we put each other down. It is a tool for personal growth. It is a tool for us to cheer ourselves on. It's a tool for others to cheer like your spouse on or your best friend on. Like, hey, yeah, I know that you struggle here, but I'm here for you. I know you do it differently than I do it. So for instance, like you guys being a 7 and a 5, very different personality types.
Totally opposite.
Very much. But I see it a lot. I see that couple type a lot. And what brings us together initially can be the thing that frustrates us later. But that doesn't mean it has to, because what really attracted you at first is still there. And once you understand what it was that really spurred you on or encouraged you or inspired you back in the day, it's still the same thing that can inspire you if you still are able to see it and recognize it. So for the 7 who's ready to go and has all the creative ideas and wants to try new things, that can pull the 5 who wants to kind of withdraw and be by themselves all the time. It gets them out. It helps them to see the world. Now, if it goes too far, if the 7's like, you must be this way, well, that can really be detrimental to the 5 who needs a lot of private time to process their thoughts and feelings. But this is super helpful because it's like the 7 can go, oh, I don't understand that, but I also get it. Like, I see you for who you are. And I want to learn how to bring the best of me, but also allow you to be the best of you. And I know you need some more time alone, more than I would want you to have, or the more I definitely wouldn't want to have. At the same time, for the 7 to grow, the 7 needs to learn to slow down, which actually is moving towards that 5 space. And this kind of gets into there's these lines, right, that connect all the types. The 7 is connected to 5 and the 5 is connected to 7. When the 7 actually slows down and goes inward like a 5 would, and they process their thoughts and feelings, which can feel horrible to the 7, it feels like they're stuck or they're trapped. But when they get past that and transcend that fear, it actually is a place of peace. It's a place of blessing. It's a place of gratitude, and where they actually feel satisfied and content. Initially, it feels horrible, but all growth does, right? Growth is like, oh, this is fun.
It hurts.
Yeah. But once we get past that initial, it's kind of like when you exercise, muscles are going to be hurting for a while. Once you get past that, it's like, man, this is great. And so for the 7 to learn to move inward, and the 5 can show the way, it's super amazing. But also, like I said, the 7 showing 5 the way to be more outward, to be connecting with others. So you guys can actually benefit each other greatly when you understand what's going on in the internal world, and to be each other's supporter, which can be really amazing.
That's amazing. I'm just sitting here like,
it is.
I'm like, you ever heard the phrase, you just read our book? Have you ever heard that? Yes, like
that's exactly what that is.
That's exactly. I mean, especially for us, it's like.
But it can. Here's. Let me see if I'm even reading your book even more. Here's where it can really frustrate you. So the 7 is always looking. Their mind naturally goes to the next thing, and they have plans A, B, C, and D. Like, so even now you're here, but you're probably also thinking of all the other things that could be happening. And that's not a slight. It's not a slight to us, because I get it.
Yeah.
And so your mind's always thinking about what could be, or what maybe you're missing, or what's the next thing. We need to kind of help to pull you back a little. But what can frustrate you is she is thinking of how can she get more inward? How can she observe more? How can she gain more knowledge? Or are people depleting her inner resources too much, which is basically this interactive battery life. So 5s wake up every day with about 20 to 25% interactive battery life. 7s have like an endless supply.
My God.
And so you're, as a 7, thinking, let's go, let's have fun. And she's like, dude, I have 5% left. It's 3:00. I have 5% left. I cannot go out with Susie and Joe.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You can't spring this on me. And you're like, what? Like, it's a surprise. This is fun. And she's like, I cannot go. So think about it as like a cell phone. If you have 5% and you still have like 5 hours left in the day, and she grabs your phone to watch, like, and maybe you're not a sports person, but like some sports, streaming thing. and you only have 5% left, you're going to be like, hey, honey, no, like I
Right.
only have 5% left. Well, that's what a 5 does to others because they only have so much to offer. Now, here's a heads up. This would be a helpful tool. When you want to surprise her or go do this extra fun thing that wasn't planned, you could, or even if it is planned, you can say, hey, where's your battery life right now? And do you need some time to recharge so that we can go out with our friends or that we can go do this special something? Because I know that you only have so much in the day and I've kind of sprung this on you, or something that I want to do that we didn't plan for, or I know that you had meetings that drained you. How can I serve you best so that we can do this fun thing? And that is just a great middle between. But also you can say to him, like, hey, I know that you're always wanting to go and do fun things, and I'm not always either willing or want to or even able, but how can I make sure that you get certain things that are going to be beneficial to you and places that I can join you because they want companionship.
Yeah.
And how can I join you? And so just having this understanding can totally change the trajectory of your type 5-7 marriage.
And I'm telling you, you're reading a book. But I think the beauty in the Enneagram, as far as just the differences and the correlations between a 5 and a 7, a 6 and a 9, whatever your type is, there's so much depth there that can help marriages, that can help relationships. And two things, you all just did a podcast on parenting, and it's like, okay, we've talked about it in marriage counseling, how are we going to parent, but this is your type, this is what you see the world through, this is how your lens, this is your glass, and this is mine. Like, so how can we come together? And just kind of reverting back to your point where you said the spur of the moment, or if I have something planned, kind of speaks to your point from the book, The Assumicide.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, early on in our marriage, it would be like, hey, my parents want to go out to eat. It's Tuesday. It's 4:00. They want to go out to eat at 7:00. Let's go. And early on, it was like so frustrating for me. It's like, no, let's just pick up and go. And for Destiny, once she started listening to the Enneagram, and I just heard you say it, her vocabulary changed, because it was like, oh my God, this is me all day. Like, she would start saying, like, I'm depleted. My battery is depleted. And I didn't understand. I'm like, your battery, like, what are you talking?
Okay, well, so you're like a cell phone, like my case right now. They can see it, but I know the audience can't. Yeah. But I have a Mophie case on. You're like a phone with a Mophie case. You're like, what? Just hit the button. Just like, you'll charge right up.
Reset. Like, you'll be fine. And I didn't get it. I didn't get it. And it finally clicked for me when she actually sent me one of the podcasts you did. It was with the Awesome Marriage podcast, when you broke down each type, and she sent me the type 5, and she actually sent it to her mom. I sent it to my parents, and I was like, Beth knows exactly who Destiny is. It's like, so it made sense. But can you kind of talk about, the assumicide and just the assumptions?
Yeah. So assumicide is such a great word because it's so like in your face, but it's really saying we assume incorrectly other people's thoughts, feelings, and motives. And then we kind of live based on those assumptions. And we're so often wrong because we really kind of are thinking they're wearing the same lens as us. But even couples that are the same couple type, like a 9 and a 9 or 3 and a 3, they could have different wings, or they could be one's healthy and one's not so healthy, or they have just different stories and upbringings. So no matter what, we're all fundamentally different. And so we want to not commit a suicide. We actually want to assume that we don't know. Right. And so it's okay to have assumptions. That's just human nature. But we want to ask clarifying questions before we move on the assumption. It's just like you wanting to hang out with your parents. Of course, you're assuming this is a great idea. And hey, we've got 3 hours, but she may have had a really hard day where people totally drained her of all of her resources. And for a 7, it's like, for a 5, that battery life, they fear catastrophic depletion. And so some people might be like, well, that's a big term. Like, no, that's literally what it feels like to them, which would, in our world of phones, that would be like if your phone got to 0 and turned off, you would never be able to turn it on again.
That's what it feels like, yeah.
Yeah. And And our phones are expensive. Like
Yeah.
we would all make sure that didn't happen. And that's what's happening for the 5. And so she's down to that 5 or 2%. And she's like, no, I can't do that. It can come across, especially to a 7 or other connecting types. Like, what? Like, why are you being so cold or mean, or why don't you like my family? And so 5s, and all types can be misunderstood, but 5s can be misunderstood in this way as if they're not people, or they're cold or they're mean or whatever. And it's like, no, just see it through their lens. And again, that's where planning, which of course 7s are great with spontaneity, love spontaneity, and they love surprises, but 5s actually hate it. It's like super depleting.
Yeah.
And so we've got to learn how to, have the same language, and how to let him have spontaneity and fun. And like, I even tell like type 1s, we want them to actually move towards the 7 in growth. And so I'll tell them to schedule spontaneity.
Wow.
Excuse me. Which is so funny because it's like, it's kind of an oxymoron, right?
Yes.
But for the 1s, they're so needing to do the right thing. It's hard for them to be spontaneous because there's always a list of things that need to be done. But if they schedule it, then it's like, oh, I have a place for this. And so then they can go, what do I want to do? And be kind of fun in that moment. But it's kind of the same for the 5 in the sense of, maybe you guys need to schedule, times with friends, or like hold a space that she knows I need to reserve energy to hang out with people or to do whatever, because that's just, if she doesn't have that in her mind, she's letting her energy be depleted with everything else in that day. And then you're going to be frustrated because it's like, you've got an endless supply of fun and like, go get them.
Yes. It's like Sonic. I can just.
It's like,
Right.
if I know something is coming, then I will use my energy in a different way to make sure I keep that space open to use that energy. And that's exactly how my mind thinks about it every day. Is like, okay, what do I have to do? I need to do this, this, and this so that I can keep this energy for when my daughter gets out of daycare or something, something like that.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's why I use the phone as an analogy. Like, you aren't going to stream something live if you know you need your phone battery to last a long time in the day for something else. You'll use like maybe your email app or something that's going to take less energy, and you're going to be very mindful of how you use the phone. And so that's why it's so good for people just to kind of see it through another a person's lens, because then it just is like, oh, I can move towards you now. Like, I don't have to assume incorrectly. I can assume the best, or at least ask clarifying questions. And then I also recommend people give clarifying statements. And the reason why I mean this is, so I'm a type 9 and my husband is a type 6. When we get into tiffs or arguments, frustrations, you name it, the 9 hates any of it, any kind of tension. We start to want to shut down and withdraw. Well, one of their greatest fears is abandonment for the type 6. So when I start to withdraw because I'm trying to keep things smooth, it lands on him as abandonment.
Wow.
Like, this is the beginning of the end. I never think of that.
Right.
And that's what he assumes. That's how it lands on him. So he can ask now the clarifying question, wait, is this the end?
Are we okay?
Yeah. But I now have the opportunity, because I know this, to give a clarifying statement where I can say, hey, I'm starting to shut down, and actually I need to go process and think about this. We are okay in general, maybe not at this moment. Let's just be honest. But I need to go process, because otherwise you're not going to get the best of me. And that lets him know I'm still in it. I'm still committed. I'm still loyal. I just need a break, or I need some time to think. And that really can help him. So that's, again, I've never thought about it in the way that he thinks about it, but he assumes incorrectly, and it just gets us in this dance that's not productive and can really derail us when it doesn't have to.
Yeah. That is so good. It's so complex, and the whole thing is so good. So I really hope that people will, go to your website and learn everything they can about it. I wanted to ask you also, how does the Enneagram relate to God? Like, how do you, that's what you do with your platform. So.
Right. Yeah. So we do it from a distinctly Christian perspective. The Enneagram itself is just a neutral tool. There are lots of people can use it in different faiths, different religion, different worldviews. We use it distinctly from a Christian perspective, mainly because we believe real transformation happens from the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. And so what we say is each type has that core longing we talked about. And that core longing, we're looking for things of the world to satisfy it. Could be a person, a job, clothes, food, whatever. Like we just kind of basically in Jeremiah 2:13, it says, "We have forsaken God, the spring of living water, and we have dug our own cisterns that are broken and don't hold water." So if you think about this analogy, you've got the spring on your left-hand side, this amazing, glorious, fresh spring, and you could drink from it as much as you want. Or you can turn and dig a cistern, which is basically a well. You put mortar around it. You've taken a long time to build this thing, but it doesn't have self-fulfilling water. You actually have to put water in it. And countries or kingdoms would use this inside a kingdom, because if someone was going to attack them, they would close up the kingdom and they would have some water as a resource. But the water gets stagnant and stale and actually gets really gross because animals will fall in it anyway. It's a whole thing. So it's kind of gross. Really not the kind of water you want to drink. It's only if you're desperate. But also what it says in the scripture is that not only is it not satisfying, but the well itself is broken, the cistern. And so even if you pour water in it, it can't hold water. So it's like a broken coffee mug. Like that just isn't going to work. So what God is saying is that all these things that we try to fill our lives with apart from him will never fully satisfy. So each of the 9 types has a core longing that they're trying to get met apart from Christ, which is that cistern. And we have many cisterns. And one of those is our spouse. Now, on one side, God gave us our spouse as a beautiful gift. But if we turn that into like an idol where we start to, like, we have desires that our spouse fulfill us, but if we turn that to a demand and then we judge them for not doing it and then we punish them, that just doesn't help. But if we recognize, wait, my spouse can't fulfill this longing I have, and we turn back to that spring that's right there next to us and we drink as much as we want, as many moments or days or weeks that we want, then when our spouse gives us, even if it's a thimble full of water, we're already saturated. We're already fulfilled. So that little thimble is like, thanks so much. That was awesome. Right. Whereas before, we were totally depleted and begging and demanding it, but no matter what they did, it didn't work. So the core longings of the type 1 is to hear you are good. And Christ satisfied that for them. And Christ satisfies all these. The type 2 longs to hear you are wanted and loved. They always feel like they have to serve and help, that there's not unconditional love, but there is unconditional love with God. Type 3s want to hear you are loved for simply being you. They always think they have to achieve or have the best image or be admired, but their accomplishments are actually Christ's accomplishments. It's been done. Type 4s long to hear that you are seen and loved for exactly who you are, special and unique. And he designed them. And when God creates and designs things, it is good and it is special. 5s long to hear your needs are not a problem. For the 5, they feel like their needs are these huge boulders. And like, it's hard for me. Why would I want to hand this off to someone else? I'll just minimize my needs and try to take care of it myself. But God, being the God of the universe and galaxies, even protons and neutrons, nothing is too hard for him. Your needs are not only not a problem, it's a privilege and honor for him to serve and take care of his children. And then the 6s, they long to hear you are safe and secure. And he is God Almighty, so absolutely are we safe and secure with him. The 7s long to hear that you will be taken care of. And sometimes this throws 7s off because they're like, really? What does that mean? Well, 7s have this insatiable desire to fill themselves up with stimulation and excitement. So think of it like an empty bucket inside, and they have holes at the bottom. And so they keep using the world and fun and all these things to fill it up, but it slips out. Well, the thing is that he is the spring of living water. He will take care of you. And the more the 7 is still and present and sees what they have already been given, the holes plug up and they actually fill up, and they have this contentment and satisfaction. So Christ has already done that for them. And then the 8s long to hear, you will not be betrayed. And Christ was the most betrayed. Therefore, he did it for them to protect them, and he will have their back. And then last is mine. We long to hear that our presence matters, the type 9s. And man, does our presence matters. I mean, the God of the universe left his throne to be born, to live, and to die, and to rise again, all to bring us back into relationship with him. There's nothing more that says your presence matters. So that's where we take the Enneagram to a whole new level to show that real freedom, real transformation starts here at this moment of recognizing that he is taking care of us, even at our corest, deepest needs. And when we settle there, everything starts to loosen up and our growth starts to happen.
That's amazing.
It's like, yeah.
What I loved is that I listened to you say every single type, but when you said my type, I can't even repeat what you said, but when you said it, it went into my heart. Like I heard it.
Right?
That's the most amazing thing about it, is that
yes,
when you spoke my language, it went straight into my heart, and I received it. And I was like, wow. When you said something about like God, it's a privilege for him to meet my needs. And it just went straight into my heart. And I was like, wow, that is amazing about God.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that's what I love so much about this, because everything else I said is still true for you. Like we all want to know that we're good, that everything's been taken care of, but it has been taken care of by Christ. And that means a lot to you, but it's something when it hits the core of our main type, it literally opens and transforms things in a whole new way. And it's like breathing fresh air, like, really? It's been taken care of? And like, yes, it's been taken care of. And that's what puts us on the trajectory of growth. And that's where we can lay things down and move towards our spouse or our kids or coworkers in totally different ways, because we can always come back to that truth that he has taken care of it. And that is just so relieving.
It is.
I'm telling you, and this is no slight to the 5 love languages, by no means stretch of the imagination. I really thought I was doing something when I was speaking her love language. But when we tapped in, well, I will say when I tapped into the Enneagram, I mean, it was a whole another world. Just like, just understanding the why you do this, why do you say this, why do you respond this way, and vice versa. So, Beth, we are so appreciative of you being on the show.
Yes.
It's my joy.
I hope all of our listeners will go and check out yourenneagramcoach.com. As Beth said, you can take free assessments. And Beth, can you say the link for the PDFs? I think it was.
Yeah. So for the core motivations, it's yourenneagramcoach.com/core motivations.
All right, More Love Nation, make sure you all go check out the Enneagram, take the test. It will be linked in the show notes. Also, make sure you follow Beth on Instagram and Facebook at Your Enneagram Coach, and check out their newly released podcast, Your Enneagram Coach. By the way, I love the episode about the parenting, and it was just like,
we got one coming up on parenting, and we interviewed our kids who are now 20 and 22. So you get to hear how we've used it for the last 12 years.
Yes. Wow. And we have an infant daughter. She'll be 1 in a month. And it's just, we are interested to see, what her type is going to be and how we use the Enneagram to parent. So
yes, absolutely.
Again, we are honored to have you on the show. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
And again, thank you for being on the show.
Bye, guys.